I'm Miwa Messer. I'm the producer and host of Poured Over. And Jeff Chang, I mean, I've been reading you for what I thought was more than 20 years, but somehow the first book is 2005. Why do I? No, I've definitely been reading you longer than 20 years. I mean, you're the guy who I think of when I think of hip hop history, right? Like
Ah,
that's how you hit my radar.
wow.
And there are a couple of other books in between.
Yeah.
But now we're here with the biography of Bruce Lee, Water, Mirror, Echo. And it's been out for a minute. So, like, usually we're one of those, we don't do spoilers, but also it's a biography. You kind of do know,
Yeah.
unfortunately, what happens. But there's so much more because you've written a joint biography actually of Bruce Lee in Asian America. And
Yes.
that's the thing where I was like, okay, I like Jeff's work. I follow what you do. You're very interesting, but you've done a thing that not really anyone else has done before. And that's where you got my interest. Because there was plenty of Bruce's biography that I did actually know,
Mm.
but the way you put all the pieces together. In 1973, we're going to spend some time in 1973.
Let's do that. Let's do
um,
that.
but before we get to 70, before we go back to 1973, I do want to talk about where this book started because you've been working on this for a minute and there have been podcasts in between and you've worked on documentary films and a couple of other books have come out and also the YA adaptation of Can't Stop, Won't Stop, which is
Yes.
so much fun. And yes, I have
Yes.
it right on the corner of my desk because I couldn't find my original copy of Can't Stop, Won't Stop, which tells me I loaned it to someone and it just never came home, which, you know, these things happen.
For sure. But my family thanks you because you'll have to buy another copy, and that
I will.
means another night of dinner. So thank you.
No, but seriously, Bruce Lee, I mean, he's always been in the back of your brain. I know that.
Yeah, for sure. The genesis of this is that a Korean American editor, Junie Don, approached me actually not too long, I don't think, after Can't Stop, Won't Stop first came out. And he said, "Hey, you're an Asian guy that did something on hip hop. I bet you could do something on Bruce Lee." And I was like, "Yeah, I totally can." um, and so I couldn't get to the races just yet because I had it was out of contract, right? So I
Mm,
had literally two more books that were owed at that time to St. Martin's
right.
Picador, and of course, subsequent to that, I did three books, including the YA edition, as you mentioned. So it took a while to actually get that to the front of the desk, so to speak.
Hmm.
And it also took me a while to really understand the story. I thought I knew a lot about Bruce Lee, and I
Hmm.
turns out I really didn't. And one of the things I was determined to do from the beginning was to try to place him back in his life and times.
Hmm.
And so I realized that I had a lot to learn about histories of Asia and the Pacific,
Right.
which kind of all end up in the book in some
Yeah.
form or another. And the last part of it too was I just really needed to build trust with a lot of folks. I mean, as you can
Hmm.
imagine, right? Like Bruce's family and his closest friends, they've been hit up a million gazillion times since
Right.
he's passed away. And justifiably, and I think I totally sympathize. Like people are like, "Who are you?
Right.
There's gonna be another book about Bruce Lee." And so it I came about this the honest and sort of humble way, which is that
Hmm.
I went in, I did all my research, and I very slowly got into doing the interviews, and it took a while, but I'm glad that it did because one of the things that happened is the pandemic.
Right.
And, for us, for you and me, and for other folks who look like us, the pandemic was maybe something else than what it was for other folks.
Yeah.
There was not just the threat of illness, but the threat of violence.
Hmm.
So we're kind of going through all of this. There's sort of an identity crisis that's happening in Asian America. And at the same time, the image of Bruce reappears in
Hmm.
Chinatowns and Asian American communities on our Asian American Instagram and Asian American TikTok and Twitter and whatnot. And he was just a powerful symbol that people needed to bring back at that
Right.
particular moment. And so then I was like, oh, there's a bigger story here than just the story of Bruce. There's the story of Asian America that needs to be told as well.
I mean,
So
also, if you think about the fact that Asian American as a term didn't even really exist until sort of the late 60s, early 70s.
that's right.
And I know there's the divide. It was started in Berkeley and then it was started in Los Angeles. And I am not taking sides.
I,
I am not taking
yeah.
sides. There are people who
Yeah.
have very, very specific opinions about that.
There are, yeah, there are. I told the story that's set in Berkeley mainly because I
Yep.
live in Berkeley,
I know,
but also,
I know.
but also because I needed to kind of relate it to what what was kind of happening here, which was the Third World Liberation
Yep.
Front, and so anyway, we can get into that a little bit more. I don't want to bore.
Oh, we're
people just
totally
yet,
coming
yeah.
back to it because
Okay.
it's a huge part of all of the work that goes into this book. But I mean, part of it too is you are talking about a very ambitious dude who wants to have a film career. He wants to be a producer. He doesn't want to just be the guy
Yeah.
doing the stunts or the yelling or and it's really wild. The Criterion Collection obviously has this giant 6 film, with all of
Yes.
the extras kind of stuff. You wrote the book for it as well, which I appreciate. And I love the idea that there's a Criterion Collection for Bruce
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Right? Like when
Totally.
you and I were young, that was not a thing. That was
No.
like you passed around the all right, VHS tapes. We're going to date ourselves really badly for a
No,
second.
it's true.
But
Yeah.
like, and you would hope that your little brother would rewind them. We had a rewind problem in our house.
Be kind. Rewind.
Yeah, well, little brothers, man. But at the same time, like here we are with sort of a much more, is patina the word I want? Well, it's the one I'm going to use. But
Okay.
there's a patina of legitimacy and art and culture that, he goes from being sort of grindhouse, right?
Yeah.
To, oh, hey, Criterion Collection. Right.
Yeah.
And
2000%. Yeah.
it's great to see, but also you come out of Honolulu, you land in Berkeley. I grew up in the suburbs of Boston. I integrated my elementary school until the 6th grade, and then a kid from El Salvador showed up. And he helped me integrate. And my brother actually didn't go to the same school because the class he would have joined was like 6 little girls and him. And my parents were like, that he should probably have people to like run around in the woods with. So he ends up going to public school and integrating his public school.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and this was not that long ago,
Yeah.
right? This was
Yeah.
really not that long ago. And, I think we both have the experience too of other kids coming up and being, trying to make kung fu noises. And you just kind of
Sure.
stare. Like the best thing to do is you just kind of stare at them and go, what?
Yeah.
What are you? But to see this evolution of Bruce Lee from like that guy
Yeah.
to Bruce Lee icon
Yeah.
is a trip, and the way it parallels so much of Asian America's development and growth and evolution. And I do want to keep using Asian American and Asian America as I know we're not a monolith, right? Like we are super not a monolith, but I think Bruce Lee does give us an icon that speaks to anyone, regardless of whether you're Thai or Cambodian or Vietnamese or Chinese or Taiwanese or Japanese,
Yeah.
American,
Yeah.
right? I think that's a fair statement to make, don't you think?
Oh, 2000%. And,
Okay.
and South Asian and Filipino and
Yep.
and on and on and on. Absolutely. That's the whole thing about the pandemic was I just remember there were a lot of debates among my students in the late 2010s about like, what even is an Asian American anymore? Like
Right.
this term has become so entropic. It's sort of expanded beyond all kind of comprehension. I can't understand like what I, as a 4th-generation Japanese American, might have in common with, a South Asian, son or daughter of, immigrants here on a H-1B visa. I don't get it. And then the pandemic happens and the violence begins, and it's the type of thing where it's, Trump is saying Chinese flu, Chinese virus, and Kung flu, but it doesn't make us Chinese. It made us Asian American. And
Right.
suddenly people were like, oh yeah, solidarity. Like that's what Asian America kind of got started on in the first place. And so, for me, it was this thing of like, we need to kind of revisit, I'm not saying we. I say I needed to kind of revisit these
Hmm.
stories that are, frankly, for me, I was an Asian American Studies major at
Right.
UCLA. I studied under Ron Takaki and Ling Chi Wong and all of these sort of luminaries of Asian American Studies at UC Berkeley. So I knew all these stories, but I actually began to see them in a completely different light
Hmm.
in light of Bruce Lee, because there was a time for me, even as somebody who had an Asian American Studies degree, to be like, gosh, I don't really think that this fits me anymore,
Yeah.
and so that was the kind of part of my life where I was like, politically, I affiliate more with a hip hop generation type of vibe rather than an Asian American type of vibe.
But I mean,
Yeah,
that's kind of what you and I were raised on in a way. We were supposed to, I mean, if you look at sort of, that edge of Gen X into millennials, I mean,
hmm,
hip hop became the dominant culture in a
right.
lot of ways, and it spread very quickly. And
Yeah.
let's take the Parents Resource Music Council out of it and Tipper Gore out of it for a second. The
Oh, why not?
way, well,
Why? No, I'm serious though, because that particular censorship, I think, prefigures the kind of censorship that we're seeing now. That's coming
it does. But
from,
do you think it actually
the,
hurt? I mean, I feel like it propelled hip hop forward and made more people want to be part of it and didn't
yeah.
actually do what they thought it was going to do.
I
I mean,
agree. I totally agree. It made it more into a type of thing where it's like, oh, this is not just black folks and brown folks in the cities
mm,
anymore. It's like now they don't want us. Like, you got kids in the suburbs going, they don't want us to hear it. Like,
right.
let me hear that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Let me run towards that. And it's like what Ice-T and Chuck D were saying at the time. It's like that particular moment causes folks to actually begin to understand the linkages in solidarity that folks need to kind of form, right? Like,
Right.
this is a period in which a lot of laws are being directed at regulating and containing young people, such that we then have an entire generation that grows up, not latchkey kids like us
Mm,
and
right.
sort of feral and running the streets, right? But literally like locked into this sort of scheduled, fun type of thing
Right.
that becomes programmed, and you know, and then the next generation is all up on their phones and stuff, and parents, even parents like us, are like, this is better for them than them being wild and rebellious and all of that. So we're closer to our kids, I think, than previous generations
Hmm.
were to their kids, certainly to us and our parents. But what was sort of the cost of that? What was sort of the missing thing of folks being able to discover their own voices together, through music or through art or through movies or popular culture. I don't know. I think about this a lot anyway. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you do think about it, because then we get good books out of it. But Bruce, I mean,
Yeah.
I sort of want to start with Chinatown. I mean,
Okay.
you go into his whole family history and everything else, and it is interesting. But the invention of Chinatown, right?
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
Chinatown in Boston is 3 blocks. It's
Right.
literally 3 blocks and butts up
Right.
against, the combat zone, which you can guess what the combat zone is, y'all, if
Yes.
you haven't
Yes. Yes. Yes.
experienced Boston's combat zone. And I don't even think the combat zone exists anymore. I think Emerson College has
Mm,
expanded and there are dorms and like it's just a place to walk now.
right. Uh-huh.
Philadelphia's Chinatown, I think, is 3 blocks and was
Yeah.
about to be torn down for a new stadium. DC's Chinatown is 2 blocks.
Right.
Even in Los Angeles, traditional Chinatown is now 3 blocks.
Yeah.
But we have Monterey Park and the Valley. And so
Sure.
San
San
Francisco,
Gabriel.
Berkeley, I haven't been there in ages, so I don't know the map of
Uh-huh.
your
I
Chinatown.
mean, it's pretty much the same. It's sort
Okay,
of
so
Chinatown, where Chinatown's always been, and the sort of Richmond, the inner and outer Richmond district,
okay.
if you're talking about San Francisco, yeah. And then
So,
now actually Visitation Valley. But anyway, I digress. Yeah.
but Bruce Lee is a product of Chinatown. I mean,
Yes. Of
he's
segregated communities. Yes.
absolutely. I mean, we're
Yes.
talking the early 60s, right? And some of
Hmm.
the photos in the book too are so, like my dad wore those same outfits,
Yeah.
in Maine
Yeah.
and New Jersey and Boston, right?
Wow. Uh-huh.
Like all of
It's a
the
fashionable
button-down shirt.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. The like the
Uh-huh.
button-down shirt, he kind of looks like Dick Van Dyke on the Dick Van Dyke show too. I mean, Bruce is this guy, like he's just these photos of him, right? Like he
Yeah.
just looks like a guy of his moment.
Yeah.
And he's reading like,
He's reading Alan
Napoleon
Watts
Hill and
and
yeah, but
Napoleon Hill. Yeah.
Napoleon Hill and Alan Watts. So he's pulling in the sort of
Yes.
beatnik zen of the
Yes.
60s, but also like literally the first self-help
Yeah. The American
success
self-help.
kind of book that sets up like Norman Vincent Peale
Right.
and a whole subgenre of books, right?
Thinking,
Like,
yeah, Think and Grow Rich, Power of Positive Thinking, all of this stuff that, uh, and one of the strands of which leads to Trump,
yeah,
prosperity gospel and Trump.
right.
But yeah, but anyway,
But it's a trip to see this because I think people do, even within the community, have this idea of him sort of walking around in, a gi all the time, or you know what
which
I
he,
mean,
yeah, which
but
he
like
never wore
seriously,
except for in Seattle for a short bit. But yes,
right?
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like he's this guy of his time, of his moment, and we've taken him so out of context.
Yes,
Right?
yes,
Like we've just
yes,
popped him out of context and
yes.
everyone knows the photo, everyone knows the stills from the films, right? Like
Hmm.
there are a couple that make me laugh because the older my brother gets, the more he looks like Bruce Lee. It's wild. But
Wow,
anyway, it's trippy. It's really, really trippy.
handsome guy.
Well, yes, but it does make me laugh when I say, because I'm like, how is
Uh-huh.
this even possible? What? Um, it's really the nose and the jaw.
Ah,
But the idea that we've put him on a shelf in a way, right? Like
yeah.
he's the films, I mean, he's whatever documentary footage we have, he's still photographs. He's not a father and a husband and a guy trying to make his way in the world, right?
That's right. Yeah. And that was all the stuff that I was trying to learn about and trying to recapture. Because, Bruce, you said it well. Bruce is sort of this scrim that we project all of our dreams, our hopes, our sort of childhood fears
Hmm.
onto, our also like our dreams of power,
Yep.
and grace, being able to move through the world with grace, I think,
Yeah.
and dignity onto. And that's why he's such a hero for so many folks who feel put upon, oppressed, or
Hmm.
stepped on all around the world, right? All around. I mean, he's the one for our generation. I feel like, the dominant image of our generation of Bruce was that old giant robot T-shirt where they had him in dark glasses, shirtless, and they put him behind a pair of turntables, getting ready to just
Yep.
get busy, right? But he was that guy that was instantly cool and that put us in the conversation with other folks. I could have endless conversations about kung fu films and Bruce Lee with all my hip hop buddies, no matter where I was meeting them all around the world.
Right.
Beyond hip hop, like Bruce Lee was that common thing.
That also comes back to segregation, though, because those films were being played in inner city movie theaters. I mean, they
That's exactly
weren't.
right. Yeah.
That's exactly how we also get to blaxploitation too. Like the
Right.
culture
Yeah.
feeds the culture, but it starts with
Yeah.
segregation.
It starts with segregation. So that was all a part of stuff that I was like, oh, this is such a bigger story.
Right.
Bruce is born in San Francisco, so
Hmm.
birthright citizenship.
Yep.
He's an American, but he goes back to Hollywood, when he's just months old. And he grows up in sort of war-ravaged Hong Kong, barely survives the
Right.
war there. And then the post-war period is this incredibly disruptive period. There's an anti-colonial movement. Folks are fighting against the British. There is a lot of labor unrest. There's most of all this huge influx of refugees from across the border after the end of the Chinese Civil War.
Right.
And so there's this huge, massive growth of young people, especially young guys, like wandering around Hong Kong, underhoused, underfed, and just angry. And
Hmm.
out of this, like this really ritualized fight club culture kind of grows up. And that's what Bruce comes of age in. So he's kind of privileged, but he also is like, man, like I'm getting picked on, I'm getting bullied. I need to figure out how to defend myself. And that's why he enters into studying martial arts. And then he comes back to the US because he's gotten in too many fights, and he loves the taste of blood on his lips. And his parents are like, and his brother is literally telling his parents like he's gonna get himself killed, and his parents are like, you're out of here.
Right.
We're sending you back to the US. And when he does that, he's basically like any immigrant coming to the US. He is like, oh man, I've been flunking all my English classes. I better study my English now. He's like, I don't know what's going to be on the other side of the Pacific for me. He has no real people other than the folks that his father is introducing him to, who are all a generation older than him. So he, he's trying to make a way and forge his way, and he does it in segregated Chinatown. He does it in the segregated Central District in Seattle, which is already 95% white, and those 5% all are crammed into this little area in the middle of Seattle. And so he's meeting Black folks. He's meeting Japanese Americans who have like grown up, scarred by the camps experience, right? Yep. Jailed by the U.S. for being Japanese American. He's meeting Black folks who have been beaten by cops. He's meeting poor white folks. He's meeting, Latino folks, working class brawler types. And those folks are asking him to teach him. And so those are the people who introduce him in a lot of ways to what the U.S. is, what America is.
And he gets started on a path to actually coaching James Coburn and Steve McQueen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which comes much later. Yeah.
Much later. But like all of this starts in a really earthy, grounded way.
Yeah.
And he marries his first wife, couple of kids.
Yeah.
Vietnam is looming in the background. They do get married very young. Her family is not thrilled by the idea that she's going to marry Bruce Lee. Super not thrilled, in fact.
Super unthrilled. Yeah.
But
yeah,
the context of Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
Vietnam is, there are a lot of folks who really don't have a bead on how big that was for America.
Yeah.
And how much change that entire experience of war and then the aftermath in Cambodia and there's just, folks don't remember it, right? You and I remember all of those movies, right? We got through Platoon and every other Vietnam movie ever made. Because there was that moment where in literature and in film, even on television, if I remember correctly, there was a couple of TV shows that also followed troops and nurses separately in Vietnam. And it was like everyone was working out their feelings about it, but the Asian American cast was always in the background, right? They were cooking.
You're talking about like MASH and stuff like that. Yeah,
MASH, but also there was other like later in the 90s. But
sure.
But the idea being that it was always centered around whiteness.
Yeah. Right.
It was always, or maybe you got a couple of Black guys, and now Spike Lee has done the Five Bloods, and so we have, in addition to that, but that's 2023 that movie was made.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So, I mean, here's a guy who's trying to figure out how to take care of his family and other assorted things when, much like the Chinese Americans were having to deal with the Japanese Americans, and people were putting up signs saying not Japanese.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm Chinese or
that's right. Yeah.
Or more colorful language.
But when Bruce comes in, it's a little bit, there's a shift that's happening, right, with this new generation of folks. So Bruce is part of like this sort of mini generation. Bruce is one of the very earliest, if you will, kind of immigrants before the reopening of immigration after 1965, with Immigration Nationality Act, in which then, since that time, Asian American populations have just, it's been a total upward curve from that, because they had to remove these racist quotas on folks. But because Bruce was born in the U.S., he kind of slipped in before that. And then in 1963 and 64, Kennedy is allowing refugees to come into Chinatown from Hong Kong.
Right.
And that really shakes up the entire sort of map of Chinatown. And then in 1965, of course, the shift happens. But to go back to your point, yes, Bruce is born in 1940, which is when the Chinese Exclusion Act is still in effect, right? And then he goes back to Hong Kong on the eve of World War II, and he's there as an infant when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, Hong Kong, Singapore, pretty much all within the same 24 hours, right? It's like their main aggressive. And then the U.S. is thrust now into the Pacific in an open kind of a way, right? So from Bruce has lived his entire life. By the time he comes back to the U.S., he's lived his entire life with the U.S. deeply engaged in Asia and the Pacific, as they think of themselves as liberators. A lot of folks are not necessarily thinking of them as liberators, back in Asia, and I think that that's part of the context for Bruce's rise. Is here's somebody who is a warrior. Here's somebody who is in martial arts, which is sort of a contradiction. You got the martial part and you got the arts part of that formulation, and so it's really it was really interesting as I moved through this process to be like, wow, like, yeah, we knew that the Vietnam War was going on then. Of course, you and I have like seen all of this and lived through it, in terms of the impact of that in the way that we're seeing here on this continent, in our 20s and that kind of thing. And for you and your teens and as a younger person as well, not necessarily as much for me because I'm in Hawaii, but, Bruce is sort of this countercultural symbol, right? He's a symbol of somebody who is fighting with his hands, not with guns.
Right.
And he's fighting, and maybe some sticks. He's fighting with his hands, his legs, and some sticks.
Right.
And he's also bringing Asian philosophy into this. So he fits squarely into the sort of counterculture almost immediately as he arrives. Like at UW, he is one of like less than a handful of students in this packed Asian studies class. That's being taught by a Chinese American. All of the students in there are white because they're all searching for something that's different than this future potentially of being drafted and sent to war. And Bruce himself actually has to go up for ROTC, and he has to go through the draft, and he's luckily like let off, and otherwise, we might not have had Bruce Lee. He would have been alongside his Asian American, brothers, like on the front as cannon fodder, as not as cannon fodder, as machine gun fodder.
Yeah, machine gun.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what I love about the new book is this idea that the Bruce Lee that we know, right, this icon, right, he exists because of his experience in the United States. Like, he could have been a global superstar anyway, coming out of Hong Kong, but it would have been really like just his view on the world and the way he was able to feed his own ambition and also poke back. I mean, so he ends up playing Kato and the Green Hornet, and yet the Green Hornet, when it starts being replayed in Hong Kong, is what gets him his career making films in Hong Kong. And I'm like, oh, that must have thrilled him to no end. He hated that part, but yet you got to get your foot in the door, right? Like, and if you've ever seen footage of him playing Kato, it's very sort of Pink Panther, Mr. Magoo kind of. Yeah. It's. I mean, I cannot imagine the guy was getting up in the morning and going, oh, hey, this will be fun to go to work and do this. It was very much putting him in a box, and yet here he is flipping it into something else, and yet still not, even being a huge box office superstar, still not being able to produce the kinds of projects he wants. And also, James Coburn did not know he was such a weirdo. Totally did not know. Did not know that guy was a weirdo. Now I know that guy was a weirdo.
He was an older guy that was basically trying to be a hippie. So he was super
but that doesn't age well.
Into all the,
It does not age well.
Yeah. But, here we are. We're talking about Bruce Lee, right? We don't talk about James Coburn anymore.
No, we don't.
And I think that that's like, in part because of the way the history is moved, but also because Bruce represented, he tried to represent the underdog, I think.
Yeah.
And that switch comes as he's living in the U.S., quote unquote, becoming American,
Right.
Because he was a child of privilege in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
His father was a superstar in Hong Kong film and Hong Kong theater, Cantonese theater, opera. And Bruce grows up with like all of the accoutrements. Like he has a driver, he has a maid, he has, cooks, he has all these folks who are fussing about him all day and all night. It's only when he has to come to the U.S. and figure it out that he begins to identify, like I said, with folks like Jesse Glover, his first student, or Taki Kimura. And through that, he becomes the Bruce that we all know and love now. Somebody who is representing, the worker or the anti-colonial, like Kung Fu man, or the person who's coming to save the Chinese restaurant from imminent gentrification. And then of course the third world icon of Enter the Dragon.
But he does have a moment where we're still living in a moment of Fu Manchu, and we're still living in a moment of a lot of yellow face.
Yes.
A lot of Scotch tape and a lot of yellow paint. And so this is where video comes in, and we get to have fun with video.
Okay.
Because now video apparently is what you do when you podcast.
Okay.
But, one of the movies you're talking about is The World of Suzie Wong. And, here
yeah,
you go.
Yeah.
Pulping it up.
Yeah.
Old school. And Teahouse to the August Moon, when this film was made.
Whoa.
Marlon Brando played a Japanese T-boy in the film adaptation.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Marlon Brando in Yellowface. Yes.
James Michener, before all of our parents started reading Michener end to end. Sayonara.
Sayonara. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, John P. Marquand, remember his Mr. Moto series?
Moto. Oh, my God. Mr. Moto. Yes. Yes.
Kind of James Bond, but not.
Not really. But actually also in some ways, a model for what they were trying to do originally with Enter the Dragon. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, it's, I have to show you. Pearl Buck, The Good Earth, only here's Peony as a romance.
Wow.
And yes, these things live in my house because sometimes, it's good to remember what came before because there are times where, and there are some others that I'm simply not going to share on the internet right now because you're like, I know someone thought this was a good idea, but like, what am I looking at?
Right. Right.
And part of that too is, veterans coming back from the Pacific Theater. I mean, that was, let's start with culture shock, but then there's also PTSD, among other things. I mean, all of it. Yeah. And here's this guy who's like, well, I really just want to make movies. And I really want to be a show-offy kind of center of attention guy. And he's got all of sort of the skills to do it. And yet he's still got folks saying, the accent. Yeah. We can't have you talking as Cato with an accent. And even I think Coburn has a line in the book where he's like, I really don't understand what you just said, but okay, like you're a cool dude. And it's just, okay, let's slow down for a second. Like that's something where if you listen to the footage of him, he has an accent, but his English is pretty great.
His English is fine. It's, it's an Asian American accent is the way that I put it. Right. And this is the period where the U.S., all of those books that you presented, but it raises so many questions, right? But all of those books that you presented, interestingly, these are roles that Asian American women are beginning to be able to get in the 1950s after the war, because the U.S. is sort of trying to project now this global strength. And interestingly enough, like this idea of interracial romance between, sort of the white military man and the Asian woman who needs to be rescued from her backwards culture, that becomes a huge theme from the 50s all the way through now, really. But, it's part of this projection. And for the men, it's still this type of thing where on TV, you've got these actors who are like second, third, fourth generation Asian Americans. They've grown up. They speak English beautifully. They could read. They could do Shakespearean movie or plays, and they're forced to speak this like fake Hollywood Chinese like bullshit type of accent in order to be able to be on the screen. And Bruce is like, okay, I'm not going to play a Manchu. You're not going to put me in a queue and have me like waddling around. But then, you know, his first audition is to play the son of Charlie Chan.
Right.
And so, you know, he's still like kind of feeling like he might have a shot to be able to break in, right? The number one son TV show with him as the son of Charlie Chan never takes off, but they offer him this part as Kato. And when he gets on the set and they're giving him acting lessons, he's going to his coach and the coach is like, okay, where's your lines? And Bruce is like, and he's going through all the pages and he's like, I don't have any lines.
Right.
He just doesn't have any lines because they didn't want him to speak. And so it's only after he is physically demonstrating on screen, you know, in every episode, he has to save the Green Hornet's ass.
Right.
Because the Green Hornet is the CEO guy. He's in the back seat giving Kato orders like, drive, Kato, kung fu, Kato, like, do your thing, Kato, save me, Kato. And, you know, and Kato goes and saves them. And the kids like identify with Kato, you know? And so
Kato got his own toy.
He got his own toy.
Kato got his own toy.
He got his own toy, and it started out selling the Green Hornet.
Right.
And so they're like, that's when they're like, oh yeah, we got to do something. And then at that particular point, Bruce was ready for it. He's like, here's a script that I wrote. Here's all these, you know, screen ideas. I can do fight choreography. Like, put me in, coach. And by the end of the show, like he's been able to succeed in getting people really excited about Kung Fu, about Asian martial arts, and even a little bit of Asian philosophy.
73, which, I mean, 68, obviously pivotal year in American history, right? And people think of the 60s as sort of this never-ending period of change, when in fact it was really only the second half of the 60s where really significant change was coming. Like we really were still like, America up until like 64, 65 is still the 50s, right?
Right, yeah.
But the early 70s, people forget how tumultuous that was.
Absolutely.
They absolutely forget that it was a moment of pure radicalization across a million different fronts. Like everything was changing in the 70s. And you talk about 73 being this sort of moment in global pop culture where everything starts to shift. And, you know, here you and I are living in a world now where like K-pop Demon Hunters is the thing.
Right.
Like K-pop itself, like all of these things where you're just like, huh.
Yeah.
Kind of saw it coming, but didn't think it was going to look exactly like this, because we're coming out of like Bob Marley and the Wailers, and we're coming out of, you know, Muhammad Ali being global superstar too, and now it's like boppy boppy pink hair and rock on boppy boppy pink hair, rock on. I'm delighted that you're here. Listen, I think Baby Chocolate is a really fun band too. So like, or not. Oh God, I just messed up the name of their band. You know who I'm talking about, though, the sort of punk rock women out of Japan.
Yeah.
And Gimme Chocolate is the song, and Baby Metal.
Yeah.
Sorry, Baby Metal.
Yeah.
Like they're great. They're really fun to listen to. Yeah. But it's really in the early 70s when we see this shift in pop culture becoming sort of a global phenomenon. Yes, driven by America, but at the same time, like really global in a way that it had not previously been.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bruce is going through his big transformations at this particular moment as well. So you talk about 1968. It's about a year now after the Green Hornet has been taken off the air, because it just didn't do well ratings wise. And he's trying to get parts. He's just desperately trying to get parts. And he's realizing that nobody's going to give him another part like Kato. Let alone being a main character, which is what he sees himself as. So he gets a bunch of sort of weird parts, and he's mainly getting work as a fight choreographer. You know, so he can, you know, teach Sharon Tate and Nancy Kwan how to kick at each other in these shows, and he's just not getting anything that he wants. So he tries to write a movie, and they try to market it. It doesn't go anywhere. And then he goes up for as you were mentioning earlier, the Kung Fu part, which everybody in Hollywood, all the Asian American actors are like, that's Bruce's part. Like he is like the number one guy who's popularized Kung Fu as a martial art. He's a martial arts practitioner, but he's of the top rank. He's like respected, and he's popularized this. And not only that, he's an actor. He can do it. He has the chops. He can do this. So George Takei is like, yeah, I'm not going out for that part. You know, like this is Bruce's part. And then he auditions and they're like, we can't understand him. And so they give it to, you know, David Carradine, and they dress him up in yellowface and he crouches down in his shows and that kind of thing to be smaller on screen, as he says. And Bruce is like, wow, like this is that's really how they see me here. Like that's the final confirmation for him. And simultaneous to this, right, we've moved from 1968 now to 1971. Simultaneous to this, like the idea of Asian America spawned in Berkeley or LA, California, New York City, wherever, right? New York City, anywhere. I mean, by now it's completely spread across the country, and you've got organizations of folks calling themselves Asian American, you know, from coast to coast, and even in the Midwest. And so this idea of Asian America is beginning to really take hold. And by 1971, it's really locked in. There's a network of folks who are propagating this idea, who are pushing to like rid the world of the word Oriental. And it's a radical kind of notion and idea. And so Bruce is like, they're not going to see me the way that I see myself. I got to go back to Hong Kong and do the thing there. And again, he plays roles in which he's fighting for the underdog. Usually he's reluctant, he's put upon, he betrays his community in his first two movies, and he has to fight for vengeance and justice. And then when he starts writing his own movie, The Way of the Dragon, his third movie, he portrays himself as somebody who's literally wandering through the diaspora. Yep. He goes to Italy to protect these immigrant, you know, restaurant workers from imminent gentrification and from this sort of mob thug who wants to remake Chinatown under his own image. And he teaches them kung fu, he saves them, and then he's back on the road. And that leads him to finally get another shot at Hollywood with Enter the Dragon.
I know how Bruce's story ends, right? Yes. And I'm still a little mad at the universe, to be perfectly honest. I'm a little mad. I'm like, why would someone drop dead at 32?
Yeah.
He's now been dead longer than he was alive. And, you know,
yes.
that, all of this. And yet, reading the book and putting this context back into his life, right? This broader context that I think other writers have not always held tight to. And I think that goes back to the earlier work that you've done, you know, with hip hop and cultural criticism and art. And, you know, let's remember that you started a record label. I forgot to mention that at the top of the show. Like, I mean, polymath, okay? Polymath guy. But I'm still upset at the end of the book because he's dying. He dies again. And I'm just like, you know, there could have been so much more work. Like, I would really be intrigued to hear, like, when you see Sidney Poitier at the end of a Spike Lee film, right? Talking to kids saying, this is what the world is about, right? I would have loved to have seen something like that from Bruce, because I don't know necessarily. It's not like he was making speeches or standing on the precipice or, you know, he was really just trying to live his life, and luckily documented everything. So now we have it after the fact, right?
Yeah.
But I would love to know what 80-year-old Bruce Lee thinks about anything, to be perfectly honest, right? Like, that's where I'm mad. And I get that the guy, he had cerebral edema. Like, there's nothing I can do about it. But at the same time, I would really like to know what my elder Bruce has to say about anything, you know, filmmaking and, you know, his kids, whatever. Warrior, which, I mean, that was a lot of fun. If you haven't watched that yet, you know, you
have to.
It's delightful. I cannot recommend it enough.
They did such a good job with that.
But all of it, but that was based on what? Handwritten notes that his daughter found in a drawer. Thank you for finding those notes, Shannon.
Yeah, absolutely. 2000%.
But I just, like, we don't, you know, Yuri Kochiyama, right? Like, we got some of her wisdom, but not all of it, because she had been sort of sent into Grace Lee Boggs. We have some of it, but not, like, I feel like we're missing a set of, like, elder. Luckily we had Ron Takaki, right? Like, I mean, we have novelists who've done really interesting, amazing work, but I'm kind of like, isn't there more?
Yeah. That's such That's so true. When I got to the end of the book, I was just engulfed in sadness, actually, you know. I can definitely hear you saying being mad at the universe.
Right?
Yeah. But you know, there's a huge longing, right, for Bruce. Like people see this person who has literally passed away like almost a month to the day that Enter the Dragon
Right.
opens
Right.
At the Grauman's Chinese Center
Right?
or theater, right, in on Hollywood Boulevard. Yeah, and then it takes us like literally two generations to get to something like Everything Everywhere All at Once,
Right.
right? With Michelle Yeoh, like winning the Oscar for that,
Mm-hmm.
literally saying like the Daniels saying, you know what, you can't see us in all our humanity, so we're gonna put it all into one character and give you this sci-fi concept, the multiverse, and kind of force it down your throat, but make it fun so that
Right.
Michelle can literally be up there on stage saying, I am so lucky that I got to play all of these different characters because I'm all of them, right?
Right.
Like she's every woman, she's every Asian American woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the tax accountant person to, you know, the hectoring mother to,
Right.
you know, the kick-ass like kung fu artist to like the amazing like superstar, like, you know, kind of flowing through the ballrooms in these
Mm-hmm.
like beautiful gowns. She was all of that, and we're all of that. And
Right.
it took us two generations after Bruce's death to be able to get to that. You know, even Brandon, like thinking about him
Right.
a generation after Bruce, like making a play, like, you know, that it's heartbreaking to me when I think about it too much.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you know, this is the year that Bruce, and probably right when this podcast is coming out, would have been turning 85.
Right.
And
Right.
what would it have been, you know, like for him to be able to talk about, you know, like how he felt about Michelle in that movie. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it really
Right.
breaks
Like
the heart.
there's some stuff where it's just, or, you know, younger people who could have actually sat, you know, sort of next to him and had grandpa
Yeah.
deliver whatever they needed to hear, kind of thing. Because I do,
Yeah.
there's so much value in that oral exchange, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I love a book,
Yeah.
but I think there are pieces of histories like Asian America, right, that have not been written down
Yeah.
and sort of need to
So much.
be
So much.
passed verbally. Like they
Mm-hmm.
really have to be passed verbally, and then someone grabs them and says, okay, this is where we start, right? Like I feel like for so long too, I mean, luckily, we had Maxine Hong Kingston, and then we had Amy Tan and
Yeah.
Frank Chin and Lawson Anata and, you know,
Yeah.
Sean Wong and, you know, David Henry Huang and, you know, David Wong Louis, like, but it was always just a pop, right?
Yeah.
Like it was a pop, and now we're seeing a much more sustained kind of Asian American literary scene.
Yeah.
But like, I'd like more.
I want more too.
I would like more.
I was lucky enough last night actually to be on stage with Garrett Hongo.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, he's the
yeah.
real deal. His
Yeah.
poetry is amazing.
Yeah, just like one of the most, I think, influential poets and writers of our time for folks
Hmm.
like me, right? And
Hmm.
somebody like Garrett, like for me to be able to sit, like I was next to him, but to kind of sit at his feet, you know what
Yeah,
I
I
mean?
get
Like,
it.
'cause
I no,
he's
I
a
get it.
generation older than me, but same kind of thing, right? Born in Hawaii, you know,
Hmm.
and raised in Gardena, like sprung open by
Yeah.
R&B and Joni Mitchell, and
Hmm.
you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And just this capacious, and to hear him be like cranky and also like genius and wonderful, and you know, reading his lush poetry,
Hmm.
um and just to ask him questions. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you know, especially my actor friends who were reading this book, they were all powerfully moved because they felt like it was the kind of session that they might have been able to have with
Right.
Bruce, you know. And we're still going through it. Like I feel like the renaissance that we've kind of had in
Hmm.
Asian
Hmm.
America and in Pacifica and
Yeah.
in Hawaii, like over the last 5 years since the pandemic,
Hmm.
you know, I worry structurally about whether that's all going to go away with Hollywood like cratering right now, with the
Hmm.
publishing industry being like, we're not trying to sign quote unquote diverse books, which I think is such a misnomer. These are books that people need and want, right? It doesn't need to be given a name to justify it. But you know, like the all of that, I worry is going to roll back, you know, over the
Yeah.
next 5 years, and yet there's so much out there, and there's been such incredible writing. Tonight I
Mhm.
get to interview EY Zhao, and
Oh,
on, you know, and
cool.
her book,
Cool.
about her book, Underspin, right?
Yep.
About table tennis and Asian American sports culture, right? Which is just beautiful. And there's just an amazing kind of continuity and a breadth of amazing work that's coming out now. And I want people to be able to see it and hear it and read it. And, and we're going to do it no matter what happens in the industries, in the culture industries. But you know, yeah, you just worry. You worry about
Yeah,
that.
I do, but we also have Giant Robot, right? Like we have done the thing. Like
We've
when the
done it.
thing wasn't there, we have figured out how to make the thing, keep the thing
Yes.
alive. It's a little more punk rock than sometimes we get credit for. Like
Two thousand percent.
we're
Yeah.
not all walking around with pocket calculator. Like I was never going to be an engineer, and all props to the engineers, but like there is a little bit of a I guess a DIY ethos to, well, if it's not there, I am going to make it because I haven't seen
Yeah.
what I've been looking for. Like you come up under Greg Tate and Joan Morgan and Mike
Mm-hmm.
Davis, who are writers I love
Mm-hmm.
too. And they're also writers who shape me. Also, Greg Tate is coming back into print. I'm very excited.
Hey,
My
that's
Boys and the
great.
Buttermilk is
That's
coming
great.
back from FSG
Fantastic.
with
So happy to hear that.
Hanif Abdurraqib is doing either the afterword or a forward, and also Questlove
Ah,
has a hand in it too. So I am super excited
I'm
for him.
getting
And
chills thinking
right,
about
right.
this. Yeah.
See, like an
Yeah.
entire generation
Yeah.
of new readers gets to experience Greg Tate. Like
Yes.
that to me, and again, the high low, like Margot Jefferson always did the high
Yeah.
low
Yeah.
kind of thing. And I'm like, more of that. And we should be participating in that too. Right. And
Yes.
that's what I think of when I think of you in the previous work too, is like you do that high low thing, you do that mix, you do that
Mm-hmm.
pull, Giant
Mm-hmm.
Robot, obviously, same thing. Like there are
Mm-hmm.
pieces of Asian America where we have done a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's really exciting when we get to leave a mark that people might not be expecting. And because we get Bruce Lee too, and Criterion Collection, and all sorts of like, and you know Robert Rodriguez. Remember when he had that Grindhouse channel, El Rey,
Yeah.
like that? All
Absolutely.
of the Hong Kong
Yeah.
movies he would show there, and I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
right, and all
Yeah.
the Chanbara, you know, samurai
Yes.
stuff, and it's like
Yes.
this is a
Yes.
trip to see because I would only ever see it when I was overseas visiting family, and
Right. And now we get Zatoichi on
right,
Criterion and
like
Godzilla and yeah.
all of it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Godzilla minus one. How great was that movie? Like an
Woo.
anti-war movie made by the Japanese. Like what just happened?
It
What
was
did I
so
see?
powerful. It was just so
Amazing.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. But
In both
also,
color and black and white, I should say.
oh,
Yeah.
I didn't see the black and white version. I
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
saw the
Yeah.
but I mean, my job, and also I will say that whoever was doing the subtitles into English
Yeah.
um was doing the nuance, and I was like,
Yes.
what is
Yes.
happening here? Because I get really distracted when I see something if I'm watching something that's dubbed into English, my brain can't.
I can't either.
I
Yeah.
and I don't speak Chinese. I should be very clear. I don't speak Chinese, but I studied it enough, and also like my eyes can't handle. I can see the disconnect and it pulls me out too much. So
Yeah.
being able to watch a Bruce Lee movie with subtitles is a delight. They're
Mm-hmm.
not great, but
Yeah.
it's a delight because I can just let the thing happen. And also it just feels much more like I'm watching the dude do his thing as opposed
Right.
to like I'm gonna come out like the Cato stuff still I'm still salty about Cato, but I'm also still salty about Jonathan Pryce and Miss Saigon. So
Mm.
I will never not
Mm.
be salty about I will never not be. That was what 1990 something. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, right. And then we had our own kind of yellow face blow up on Broadway this past year too. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know, I
yeah.
apparently there's
As
some things.
Yellowface is playing, you know, right, right down the street. So it's yeah, it's really interesting.
You know, at some point we will get where we're going, but at least we have Bruce Lee, right? I mean, we
Yes,
still have him regardless.
yes,
I think it's really interesting watching people come to him from all different points of view and, you know, age and whatever. It's just the idea that this guy has become sort of a beacon, as it were, is pretty exciting.
It's amazing. And like, I think I wrote this in the book, or if not, I've been saying it a lot, but every generation kind of gets their own Bruce Lee. And, ours was Bruce getting busy on the 2 turntables. And then this generation gets the Bruce of, of warrior and the Bruce of strength and the Bruce of being a fighter and a protector.
And Bowen's documentary, which you've also been part of, but Be Like Water, right? Do I have that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which if you haven't seen.
Be Water. Yeah.
Oh, Be Water, excuse me.
Yeah.
Is absolutely.
It's incredible. It's
It
really,
is
really well done.
spectacular. And
Bao was, just so much love to Bao. Bao and I were introduced by a mutual friend of ours, Joy, many, many years ago. And so we kind of were working on this simultaneously and sharing stuff with each other. And Bao got, they got the contract to do this thing for ESPN. It was a 30 for 30 movie.
Yep.
And so just concentrated all of our efforts in helping him to get that going. And then he turned around and just, concentrated his efforts on helping me to finish the book. So
Thank you, Bao.
Yes, all love to Bao. Yeah.
Hey, are you working on a new thing? I know you're podcasting. I know you're doing all sorts of stuff, but is there a new book maybe sort of in the ether?
I've been thinking about different ideas. This came up last night, actually, talking with Garrett. I think both of us are kind of at this point where, Ocean of Clouds, his poetry book came out this year. It's beautiful. And in some ways, it feels like a culmination of all of this brilliant work that he's been doing for like 40 years. And so he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And actually, I don't know what I'm going to do next either. I want to do something that would challenge me. And so I'm thinking about fiction. I'm thinking about a thriller, or I'm thinking about like these different types of genres that I actually haven't.
Have you read Committed?
done.
Have you read Viet Thanh Nguyen's the second? It's the book that follows Sympathizer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? Dirty,
Yeah.
gritty crime thriller. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just saying. I love
Yeah.
that book. I
Yeah.
absolutely, all props
Well,
to the
I mean, there's so
Sympathizer
much.
too, but I really love the Committed.
No, Viet and Steph Chow, like all these folks are doing amazing stuff out there, right? And you can also do a lot of really heavy lifting in books like that are quote unquote genre. So, flip the pulp thing on its head and reverse the world of Suzie Wong type of narratives in a pulp kind of a way.
I would read that. I would totally read that.
Well, I've got to learn how to write it. I have to learn how to write it. So it might take another 10 years for us to get back together.
All right. Well, we'll figure it out. We'll totally figure it out. In the meantime, we have Water Mirror Echo. We have Can't Stop, Won't Stop, Who We Gonna Be, and We Gonna Be All Right. So, I mean, if somehow people didn't get their hands on those books the first time, they're there now.
Thank you, Miwa. So
Jeff,
appreciate it.
thank you so much. This was great. I had a blast.
Me too.
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.